Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the live stream. Hope you're all very well this evening. So I had planned to talk about a number of things, but then this story dropped, of course. Boris Johnson and Rishi Sunak both received a fixed penalty notice, so we're going to talk a bit about that tonight, of course. Let's see who's on the stream before we begin. We have Raven1983 Witch, great to see you. Killer, thanks for moderating once again. We have Enzo the God, great to see you, Enzo. Lenan, great to have you on. Hope you're well. Misty, great to see you. Inconsequential, great to have you on. Gene T, great to see you. We also have, let me see. GJ, great to have you on. Michelle, great to see you. Silver Blade, great to have you on. Norflinger, great to have you on too. Akismad, great to see you. Hope you're well. We also have Derek, great to see you. Mark, great to have you on. Jamie Mack, great to see you. Long time no see, Jamie Mack. We have CGM, great to see you, CGM. Oraman, great to see you. Who else? Ed Stacy, great to see you, Ed. Hope you're well. Tiny Demolition Lover, hope you're well up there in Scotland. Great to see you. We have who else? Robin, great to see you. Hugh, great to have you on. Sip, great to see you. Hope you're well. Night Raven, hope you're well too. Putin, okay. Chatty Rad, great to see you. Hope you're well. We also have Alma, great to have you on, and so many more. Wow, we're up to 231 viewers. That's amazing. Remember, guys, to smash the like button. You can also support the channel by hitting me with a super chat, and I'll read it out during the stream. And you can also become a Patreon, and you have access to Discord. And before I forget, tomorrow evening, we're going to have a special event on Discord. I'm going to post an invite on the community page, so if you'd like to if you click on that link, you get access to Discord just for a special event we're having on Discord, where I'm going to discuss a number of different things, because the Discord server is 2 years old, and it's very nice. If you normally it's open to people who are on Patreon, but tomorrow you'll be able to access part of the Discord server just to see what it's like, and hopefully maybe after that you'll be able to stay on. But I'll talk a little bit more about that later. Hope everyone is very well. Of course, as I said at the beginning, I was going to talk about a number of different things, but this story, blew up. Boris Johnson and Rishi Sunak both received fixed penalty notices. And, like morning follows night, Boris Johnson's supporters came out in support of him. So Tory MPs waiting probably for a nod from Number 10 on how to respond. A lot of them have come out and said, look, Boris Johnson needs to get on with the job. And I knew this was going to happen. I knew that this would... The anger over this would reach a fever pitch, and the Tories would say, no, we just need to move on. That was long ago. That was 2 years ago. Instead, what they're saying is, yes, he's apologized, which you're going to hear in a moment, Boris Johnson's apology. He's apologized. We need to move on. He needs to focus on, reconstruction or fixing the country or whatever after the pandemic. And there's a war on as well, didn't you know? So you can't have Boris Johnson leaving in the middle of a war, even though Britain isn't fighting the war. So let's jump into this and we'll talk a little bit more about that. George, hi, I'm isolating with the lurgy. I'm so sorry about that. Hope you're feeling better soon. Sorry about that, George. Please stay safe and get well soon. Thanks for that super chat.
Today I've received a fixed penalty notice from the Metropolitan Police relating to an event in Downing Street on the 19th of June 2020. And let me say immediately that I've paid the fine, and I once again offer a full apology.
He paid the fine, or was it one of the donors paid the fine? Because, when Boris Johnson, when it comes to putting up wallpaper and stuff like that, Boris Johnson normally calls one of his donors and they pay for it. I think this was a £50 fine. Did Boris Johnson pay it himself? Did somebody else pay it on his behalf? or did he actually claim it on expenses? And I'm being a little bit over the top here, but okay.
And in a spirit of openness and humility, I want to be completely clear about what happened on that date.
Now, okay, so you had, so everything up, so it started off with there was no party, then it was no rules were broken, then it was a business event, then it was there was a party but I didn't attend, then it was a surprise party and I didn't know about it, and I didn't know it was a party. And, how long has he been going on in Parliament saying, no, there was no party, there was no party? It was a work event. And now he's saying, yeah, I want to be transparent. Majid, thanks so much for that super chat. Fines are coming to in date order. 2 dates with fines issued, 10 left under investigation. Possibly more fines to come for Bozo. Thanks for that. Yeah, and you're right. So, it's, if this was the case of him breaking it once, he's broken it a number of times, and there are probably more fines in the pipeline. Now, my first reaction to this was, why did he say anything? Because he wasn't under an obligation to actually say anything. He could have just said, no, I haven't received any any fine from the police. I think probably what happened was he realized, look, I better tell them, because if I don't and it's leaked, it's going to become a distraction for me, and it's going to become more difficult for me to move on. That's what he wants. He wants him to say, I apologize, not I'm sorry, or really, there's no real contrition here. It's just, yeah, I'm going to make an apology. I paid the fine. Now let's move on, because, there's a war on, remember. Complete and utter disrespect for the people who followed the rules, people who were not able to be close to loved ones at their last moments, people who were not able to go into hospital because of this pandemic, people who respected there were horrible stories of elderly people dying alone because their families were respecting the rules, and Boris Johnson doesn't even have the respect for these people to resign. You broke the law, you have to resign. This was the message from his own MPs. Now, of course, it's turned into, oh, well, he can't resign because there's a war on. He can't resign because he needs to deal with the problems facing the economy post-Brexit. Post-COVID. Don't mention the B word.
My day began shortly after 7 a.m. and I chaired 8 meetings in number 10, including the Cabinet Committee deciding COVID strategy. I visited a school in Hemel Hempstead, which took me out of Downing Street for over 4 hours. And amongst all these engagements, on a day that happened to be my birthday, there was a brief gathering in the Cabinet room shortly after 2 p.m, lasting for less than 10 minutes, during which people I work with kindly passed on their good wishes. And I have to say, in all frankness, at that time, it did not occur to me that this might have been a breach of the rules.
How could you not think that? Now, I don't believe for a second it was 10 minutes. It probably went on for an hour. 10 minutes. People bring in a cake. They hand out plates and stuff like this. They get people sitting down. They light the cake. They sing happy birthday. Everyone has a bit of a cheer. They hand out the cake. People eat the cake. And, toast probably to Boris Johnson with some champagne or something. That you don't do all of that in 10 minutes. Okay. Maybe not an hour, but at least half an hour. Of course, he's once again lying here. Why can't he just be honest and say, yeah, look, just leave it at that. Look, I broke the rules. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have done it. Finish. That's it. This sort of ridiculous, I was visiting schools. Remember, think of the poor children. I was visiting schools. I was doing really good things for people. I was meeting the elderly. I was helping old ladies across the street. I was, volunteering at a food bank. No, better not go down that road. And, it was my birthday. Have some sympathy for me. It was my birthday. You know what birthdays are like. You used to have them as well. No, better not mention that, because during COVID you probably didn't have your birthday, but I had mine.
But of course the police have found otherwise, and I fully respect the outcome of
Sorry, Night Raven. Maybe that's what he did.
their investigation. I understand the anger that many will feel that I myself fell short when it came to observing the very rules which the government I lead had introduced to protect the public. And I accept in all sincerity that people had the right to expect better. And now I feel an even greater sense of obligation to deliver on the priorities of the British people.
Does anyone actually believe this? Does anyone actually buy this? I broke the rules, I broke the law, I lied about it, and then I was caught out, I was discovered. And my response is, it's really bad, and I'm really sorry about it, but, the people of Britain want me to get on with the hard work of government. Alexis, thanks so much for that super chat. The amount of Johnson's fine should be on his means. Think £250,000 at least. Yes. Yeah, like a £50 fine. So, and this is something, once again, a big problem with fines. £50 is nothing to Boris Johnson. He can burn that in front of a homeless person. £50 to somebody on universal credit is the difference between paying a bill and not paying a bill. Okay, for the month. Well, not now, actually, because now the bills have gone so high. But to Boris Johnson, Jacob Rees-Mogg, to Rishi Sunak, £50 is nothing.
Strengthening our economy, creating jobs and opportunities, levelling up across the whole of the United Kingdom. Now, of course, ensuring that Putin fails in Ukraine.
So you can't fire me because I'm necessary. This is his response. Yeah, I did bad things. I broke the law in a limited and specific way. But you can't fire me because there's a war on. Okay, there's leveling up to be done. So let's just forget about what happened and move on to me fixing the country. And remember, there's an election in May, so it's just around the corner. So we want to make sure that everyone is on board. I'm pretty sure that before this came out, a lot of MPs were briefed as in, we need unity at the moment. If you want me to go, it will have to be after May. But before May, we need to protect the party. And if I were to leave now, it would be damaging for the party just, in a few weeks' time when these elections happen, the local elections in May. So I think the Tory party are realising, okay, if we hold on to Johnson now, we try and sweep it under the carpet, distract, talk about the war, talk about levelling up, we can sort of limit the damage that's going to happen to the party. This is all about protecting the party, okay? Johnson is secondary. Johnson, of course, cares about protecting himself, but the party don't want him to walk now because this would be hugely embarrassing for the government. And in May, it will be a bloodbath.
And easing the burden on hard-working families caused by higher energy prices. I will take that forward, that task, with due humility, but with...
Humility. Come on, please. Oh my God. Fearless Wolf, thanks so much for that super chat, showing you the level of disrespect to the voters. He serves at the pleasure of the people. That's democracy. There should be, this is unprecedented. The idea that a politician, a prime minister, has broken the law. He's broken the law. You get fines when you break the law. He should resign. Because it's not just, you could say, okay, if he broke the law because he, drove too fast. Okay, you can argue about that. That was a once-off thing. It's the wrong thing. He should be punished in some way. But These were rules that Boris Johnson's government wrote. They told people, they went on camera and told people, follow the rules. You need to make sacrifices to protect other people. And then they broke them. But it's like, actually, if I was to use the speeding analogy or driving through a red light, it's like Boris Johnson went through a red light almost every week. And he told people, be careful on the road, don't break the law, drive within the speed limit, respect the traffic lights. And then Boris Johnson drove through a number of traffic lights, just completely indifferent to it. And then said after, I didn't know breaking the red light was against the law. And then apologize, I'm sorry for doing it, but I'm not going to resign. This is worse because people actually died. Yes, some people driving to a red light would cause a death, but people actually died. People were not able to be close to loved ones. This impacted, I think, pretty much everyone in the country. Everyone made some sort of sacrifice, some great, some little, during the pandemic. And him running roughshod over the whole lot of it.
With maximum determination to fulfill my duty and do what is best for the country I serve. Thanks very much.
This does make you the first serving Prime Minister to have been found to have broken the law. It's a serious matter. Will you resign?
I have, of course, paid the FPN, and I apologise once again for the mistake that I made. And as I've said just now, I want to be able to get on and deliver the mandate that I have.
Does anyone actually believe this? He's like, okay, whatever, yeah, whatever. After he, quote-unquote, apologised in the House of Commons, he went into the tea room and said, I didn't do anything wrong. So, at what stage did Boris Johnson believe that he did something wrong? Was it between the time he apologised in the House of Commons I think it was about 2 months ago, and now? And what changed in his mind? Because 2 months ago, he didn't believe it was necessary to apologise because he went into the tea room after and said, I did nothing wrong. Yeah, I apologised in the House of Commons because it was necessary. But in reality, I did nothing wrong. So does he believe he did something wrong here? Or is it he's only apologising because he received the fine?
But also to tackle the problems that the country must face right now, and to make sure that we get on with delivering for the people of this country. That is my priority.
The problem for you, though, is to do that, people have to trust you. Voters have to...
Okay, trust you. When did anyone actually trust Boris Johnson? I know the DUP trusted him and still trust him to a certain extent. But does anyone actually believe Boris Johnson? Anyone actually trust Boris Johnson? And I'm not talking about the sycophants in the party, because they see him as a benefit to them. They don't actually trust him. They wouldn't leave, £50, a £50 note on the table, and walk out of the room if Boris Johnson was there. They say they would, but deep down in their hearts, of course they would not. But they see him as beneficial to their careers, so they will rally around the Prime Minister. Maybe Nadine Dorries is an exception there. She's a sycophant, really. I think she's in love with Boris Johnson. But I think most of the MPs, especially the ones who came in 2019, see him as some sort of train. And if they get off the train, they'll be left behind. And they still see there's some fuel left in the tank. Boris Johnson is not going to resign. And in a sense, if they do abandon him, well, they're in serious trouble, because they're there thanks to him. And if he goes, they'll probably go too. Now, some of them in the red wall, for example, the red wall seats, one with wafer-thin majorities, we're talking about 300-400 votes. So if there was an election held tomorrow, those people would be out on their arses.
To respect you, they have to think you have authority. Isn't the fact that you broke your own laws, doesn't that mean that you can't do that?
I believe that it's my job to get on and deliver for the people of this country, and that's what I'm going to do.
But this wasn't an isolated incident. You've made clear you think it was just 10 minutes. It wasn't one isolated incident. There have been 50 fines so far. Do you take responsibility for a culture in Downing Street, the place that you live, but also the place where people work, where people thought that this kind of behaviour was acceptable?
Of course, I take full responsibility for everything, Vicky, but don't...
He always says this, I take full responsibility for everything. But not for the things that went wrong. He won't take responsibility for the disaster of Brexit. Michael Fabulous Hair was cheering him on as well, Max. Yes, I saw that as well.
Forget that Downing Street is about 15,000 square feet. It's got a lot of officials working, hundreds and hundreds of officials. I couldn't be everywhere at once, but clearly once it became obvious what had been happening, the types of behaviour that unfortunately...
But you are their boss. You're the one who decides. If there are people in Downing Street who you think should not be in Downing Street, you have the power to sack them. You have the power to control the environment. If you're not capable of doing that, then you should resign. Because who is in charge here? Is it you or the staff of Downing Street? Because the staff of Downing Street take their orders from you. It shouldn't be the other way around. They shouldn't be acting autonomously. They're supposed to follow the rules that you and the Cabinet Office put in place. Now, if you're not good at setting down rules, of course Boris Johnson is not a rules person. Boris Johnson is not a details man, okay? But you can't turn around and say, oh, well, it was their fault. It was because of the environment there, the atmosphere in number 10. You are in charge. Once again, if you're not capable, if you say, look, there's nothing I can do about these people, I can't tell them what to do, then step aside and let somebody else take over who can deal with them.
Sadly, we've taken steps to change things, and Downing Street has been radically transformed.
This guy is so pathetic. He's always blaming someone else. Blame the EU. Blame the public during the pandemic. Oh, cases are rising because the public aren't following the rules. Remember that? Remember when he was blaming the public for not following the rules? It was around the same time as he was having his parties. People need to follow the rules. If people aren't wearing their masks, if they're not following the rules, if they're not maintaining social distancing, if they're not staying, one per household or two per household in their garden or whatever it was, and during this time he was breaking the rules himself. It's always about blaming someone else, never actually taking responsibility. He said, yes, I'm responsible for everything, but it's number 10's fault. It's the public's fault. It's Keir Starmer's fault. It's he wanted more lockdowns. It's the EU's fault. It's France's fault. It's everyone else's fault.
It's a very different organisation, and we're focusing 100% on delivering our agenda.
But you did repeatedly say that all the guidelines were followed in Downing Street. That was a lie, wasn't it?
When I said that, I spoke in completely good faith, because...
How can you say all the guidelines were followed and then after say, oh, I didn't know what the guidelines were? Like, it's like, if I ask you to, I don't know, to build a piece of furniture, and you say, I followed all of the instructions, and then after you say, well, actually, I didn't know what the instructions meant, then how the hell did you follow them? This makes no sense whatsoever. This is what Boris Johnson was saying. I followed them. None of the rules were broken. We followed the guidance. And then after he was saying, I didn't know what the guidance were. Or I was mistaken about the guidance. But you wrote the rules. If you didn't understand the rules, then you should have asked what they were before you agreed to them. Because you had to sign off on them. It wasn't some individual in some back office that was writing these rules and signing them off on your behalf. You had to... I'm not saying he had to go through each of them one by one, but he had to at least have an understanding of what the rules were, because he had to transmit it to the public. These are the rules you have to follow. And we remember him standing at the podium saying, you must be You must wear a mask. You must maintain social distancing. You must not have any gatherings of more than 3 people or more than 2 people. Of course, it changed from time to time, but every time it changed, he came out and he explained them to the public. Does anyone actually buy this anymore? That he didn't know? That it was all a mistake?
As I've said to you just now, at the time that I was standing up for...
You're a pathetic individual. You should just resign because of that. He should just... and it's not just me because I don't like Boris Johnson, but you've undermined public confidence in the rules. You have to resign after that. And I would apply this to any politician. You know, if somebody made a mistake, if he made an honest mistake once, then you could say, okay, we can give him the benefit of the doubt. But this is on at least 20 occasions. There are reports of about 20 parties that Boris Johnson attended. Not 1, 20. And then he lied about it. If he had come out at the very beginning and said, look, guys, last week we had a party at number 10. It was wrong. I'm sorry about that. I broke the rules. I wasn't sure at the time. It's been clarified to me by the police or whoever who's meant to tell me that I broke the rules. And I'm sorry about that. It won't happen again. Okay. It was during the pandemic. People were still learning how to deal with this thing. People were still learning how to follow the rules. Give Boris Johnson the benefit of the doubt. And apply that to anyone. But if you broke it on numerous occasions and then lied about it and then stood up in the House of Commons and said there was no party or that the rules were followed to the letter, then you can't turn around after and say, look, forgive me. I didn't know what I was doing.
9 minutes in the cabinet room where I work every day, it didn't occur to me that I was...
But you didn't understand your own rules and everyone else had to follow them.
It didn't occur to me that, as I say, that I was in breach of the rules. I now humbly accept that I was. But I think the best thing I can do now is, having settled...
Is sweep it under the carpet. The best thing I can do is forget that it happened. And the best thing you can do is sweep it under the carpet and forget that it happened too. Because remember, there's an election happening in May, and the more we talk about this, the more damaging it is for the Tory brand. Okay? Remember, people, we need to protect the Tory brand. Voters have to protect the Tory brand. The way that voters protect the Tory brand is by not talking about me breaking the rules, not talking about me breaking the law. Okay? So what you do, whatever what you do, like good citizens, is plug your ears, close your eyes, and on May the 5th, go out and vote Tory. And then, and then we can laugh at you, in our smoke-filled rooms, drinking our brandy, and we'll pretend that we're men and women of the people as before. Mike, thanks so much for that super chat. Keep up the good work, Max. Have some of my overdraft. I'm past caring. I want to share my bank's wealth. Thanks so much, Mike. But don't put yourself into debt because of me. Thank you very much for that super chat. Very kind of you. So now I actually want to go to the now. Boris Johnson was not alone. He had a partner in crime here. Hopefully you're able to see it. Let me just check. Yes. This is from Sam Coates from Sky News. It says, this is, I think, from WhatsApp. Rishi Sunak issues public apology on WhatsApp. That's not exactly public, but okay. Maybe it's later on he's going to issue it. It says here, Chancellor of the Exchequer, I can confirm I received a fixed penalty notice. Now, before I read this, it's important that Rishi Sunak has been very quiet over the last 24 hours, and even over the last 5 hours since this news broke. Boris Johnson came forward and gave his apology. Rishi Sunak has been under a lot of pressure recently because of tax issues with his wife in particular, and there have been rumours that she has moved out of their home in Downing Street, and he may be moving out as well. So Rishi Sunak may actually be for the chop, but that's not 100% sure yet. Once again, I think it would be a bad move by the Tories to remove Sunak at the moment because, well, in a sense, it'd be worse to remove Johnson because it would be like the entire government imploding. But if you remove Sunak, whose popularity is completely tanked over the last number of weeks because of his ridiculous statements about, understanding poverty and these ridiculous photo opportunities where he's, filling up petrol in other people's cars and can't pay for ordinary, everyday items, like mere mortals do. I think that's gone down really badly with the public, and support for him has been completely destroyed because he was extremely popular during the pandemic because of the furlough scheme, which I support, and I think it was a very good job. It was a good idea at the time, and I commended him and the government at the time for doing that because it supported people in a way that was really helpful. But since the pandemic, his support has gone down slightly, and then the mini budget and of course his ridiculous faux pas recently did not help. And he may be on the way out. Now, if he's replaced quickly with somebody charismatic, I don't know who, they may be able to help the Tory brand somewhat. So I think there's probably something going on behind the scenes, but Johnson is not going to be forced out because it'd be detrimental to the party. Anyway, so Sunak issued this statement. It says, I can confirm that I received a fixed penalty notice from the Metropolitan Police with regards to the gathering held on the 19th of June in Downing Street. I offer an unreserved apology. I understand that for figures in public office, the rules must be applied stringently in order to maintain public confidence. I respect the decision that has been made, and have paid the fine. Yeah, Rishi Sunak paying the fine, £50. Should have been more like 50,000, but then still that'd be a drop in the bucket for him. I know people sacrificed a great deal during COVID, and they will find this situation upsetting. I deeply regret the frustration and anger caused, and I'm sorry. It's like a sort of apology that's a little bit off, isn't it? I deeply regret what? The frustration. So he regrets the frustration and anger, not regrets breaking the rules. Notice that it's like I'm sorry that people are angry, not I'm sorry for breaking the rules. He says, yeah, unreserved apology. Okay. Like the Prime Minister, I'm focusing on delivering for the British people at this challenging time. Once again, you don't fire me because I'm needed. Another Tory says, look, we just need to move on. This is Jacob Rees-Mogg, our right honourable gentleman from the 1800s, who says, this ought to close this matter, once again, sweep it under the carpet. There is a war on. So, look, a distraction. And the Prime Minister, supported by the Chancellor, provides the leadership the nation needs. I would actually ask if Jacob Rees-Mogg was at this party, but Jacob Rees-Mogg probably doesn't attend parties. They're too modern. Unless there's, I don't know, what sort of parties would Jacob Rees-Mogg attend? I don't know. I don't want to know. Yeah, just move on. This, the matter is closed. Yeah, you lost a loved one during the pandemic and Boris Johnson was partying at the same time, but let's just move on from that. Yes, you were not able to be close to a loved one. Your grandparents died alone in their home because you couldn't go and visit them because you were respecting the rules while Boris Johnson was having a shindig. Just move on from that. The matter is closed, okay? Leave him alone. He's doing his best. There's a war on, remember. This is Ian Dale. I just want to show you this clip here. So it says here, the public think it's time for the Prime Minister to go. So this is the head of polling at Optimum. Chris Curtis tells LBC that the public believe the time is up for Boris Johnson or Rishi Sunak.
We've just come out of field with our latest polling, and it shows, I mean, perhaps unsurprisingly, because this has been pretty consistent trend for some while now, that the public think it's time for the Prime Minister to go. 58% in our Snap poll think, in light of these fines, he should resign. 32% think he should stay in the job. We also asked about the Chancellor of the Exchequer, and the results were pretty much the same. 58% think he should resign. 29% think he should be allowed to continue in his job. So the public as a whole do think that the time is up for the two biggest beasts in politics. However, when we look at Conservative voters specifically, and you can argue that potentially Conservative MPs who will ultimately be making this decision might be thinking a bit more about Conservative voters rather than voters as a whole. Conservative voters think that they should both stay in their jobs. So 64% think of Conservative voters think the Prime Minister should continue as Prime Minister, as opposed to 27%.
What I find interesting is, you imagine if the roles, the position. So if you go online, you'll find Tory supporters and Tory MPs saying, no, Boris Johnson needs to stay in his job because there's a war on. Can you imagine if the situation had been different and Jeremy Corbyn had been Prime Minister, and Jeremy Corbyn had broken the rules and had a party and lied to Parliament and lied to the public, and there was a war on? Do you think the Tory supporters will be saying, no, well, Jeremy Corbyn needs to stay in his job because, remember, there's a war on? No, they will be saying he needs to go. He should resign. He should have resigned long before this. He needs to go. Him and the Chancellor have broke the law, even in a limited and specific way, but they need to go. That's it. So you're going to hear over the next number of days Tory supporters who'll mention, oh yeah, the war, remember there's a war on. Like, Britain is not a war, okay? So it's not necessary for Boris Johnson to stay there. And, you know, in 1940, the Prime Minister was replaced. There was an actual war on at the time, and the Prime Minister was replaced. So, you know, it's not beyond the realm of possibility for Boris Johnson to be replaced. But he won't resign because this is about protecting the party. Sam, thanks so much for that super chat. They will say there's a war going on. I can't see how that is any better, as no one can trust what they say due to what has happened. No one can trust them. Now, the only way to deal with this is in May, when there's the elections. Boris Johnson's not going to go. Okay, this is about protecting the party. He's going to stay there until he becomes a drag on the party. So what could potentially happen is, and I still, you know, one of the biggest names to replace Johnson, Rishi Sunak, is now his career, his chances of becoming Prime Minister are completely shot. The only person to follow on from Rishi Sunak would be Liz Truss, and she's been very quiet at the moment. I haven't seen anything from her. But there isn't a real replacement for Johnson. And you have to remember, a lot of the MPs who came in on Johnson's coattails, if Johnson go, they're in serious trouble. So it's all about protecting the party. So they're going to hold on to Johnson for a bit longer. I think even if the party, I should say, gets a bloody nose in May, Johnson will still hold on because there's no one to replace him. They can try and have another leadership contest, but they're afraid of what will happen at the next election because they need someone like Johnson to lead them. Because if you just think about who would replace Johnson, Liz Truss, okay. Half the country don't know who Liz Truss is. You guys know, and I know who Liz Truss is, but half the country don't know who Liz Truss is. So she could try and replace Johnson, but she doesn't have the clout that he has. She's not a political beast like Johnson. Johnson, you know, I call him all names under the sun, but he's very shrewd. He's very good at manipulating people, and he's a good speaker, and he's good at motivating people. In motivating people to come out and vote. Even if you don't like him, There's a sort of charisma around him. And that's what you need. And this is something that's deeply frustrating with the Labour Party is Starmer, and Mike on Sunday mentioned he's like, as interesting as a piece of wood, a plank, I think he said. And it's true. Whether I like Starmer, I think he would be a good prime minister, but you need to get into number 10 first. You need to win votes. You need to motivate people. If Starmer was in number 10 now, he'd be a much better prime minister. Yes, 100%. But you need to get there first, and you need to convince people to come out and vote for you. And Starmer doesn't have that energy. He doesn't have that flame. He doesn't have that burst of passion that Johnson has. And is there anyone in the Labour Party? Maybe David Lammy has that, but David Lammy is different. He's more, and I don't mean this in an offensive way, but he's more aggressive. He doesn't have this sort of, he doesn't have the same charisma as, and I hate to say it, as Johnson. George, thanks so much for that super chat. Suppose Johnson died of COVID back in 2020, when he went into hospital. Thanks for that super chat. I imagine he would have been replaced then, of course. No, Max Johnson isn't charismatic. He's narcissistic. Yeah, no, he is narcissistic, but he has this glow about him that many people like. Many people, people say, "Oh, I don't like the Tories, but I'll vote for Boris." And that's what got him over the line in 2019. And I said that before. It's about getting Brexit done, and I'm going to vote for Boris. Nobody says, I'm voting for Keir. They say Starmer. They don't say Keir, I'm going to vote for Keir. I'm going to vote for Starmer. So they don't even use, they don't say, even, people will say, I'll vote for Boris, not for Johnson. There's a big difference there. Theresa May, they didn't say, I'm going to vote for Theresa. Okay. Jeremy Corbyn has something similar, but Johnson was able to spread it out more. Johnson was able to reach parts of the country that Jeremy Corbyn would never be able to. On the opposite side, I mean. But if Johnson were to die of COVID, he's not. He hasn't tested positive as far as I know. So, can we make May prime minister again? Yes, go back to the boring days of Theresa May. It'd be much better than what we have at the moment. Although Theresa May, is responsible for some pretty horrid things that led to Boris Johnson becoming prime minister. Theresa May's toxic environment helped bring about the type of animosity towards migrants and the EU that helped get Brexit across the line as well.
You think he should now resign?
I don't know if you'd had a discussion in the office as to what you thought the results of this would be. I must admit, I thought it would be a bit higher than that, with people, maybe 65, 70% thinking the Prime Minister should resign. Is there any crumb of comfort that he can draw from these figures?
I mean, I can answer your question honestly, because I was speaking to a producer, not of your show, but in another one earlier, and I said what I thought the results were going to be for planning purposes, and I think then I put the number at 2/3. So yes, it's certainly a little bit less than I expect it to be, and also potentially a little bit less than we were seeing when these accusations first came up earlier in the year, particularly, as I say, among Conservative voters. And I think the reason for that is because some people think, or a lot more people now think, that it's a distraction, that there's more things going on that we should be talking about instead, be that Ukraine or be that the cost of living. So, yeah, the numbers aren't as high as I might have thought. There are some voters out there who think this is a distraction from other important issues. But having said that, it still has damaged the Conservative Party brand and the Prime Minister's brand specifically. And I think going into this big cost of living crisis over the next 12 months is going to be really tough for the Conservatives to hold on to support in the polls.
And this is where the Labour Party really should be pushing. Now, Boris Johnson broke the law, okay, but you can't just focus on this. You need to focus on things that affect ordinary people. And yes, the pandemic affected everyone. Boris Johnson broke the rules while people were following the rules. But fortunately in a sense, that is sort of behind us. We're not in the in deep in the pandemic at the moment. Yes, it's still ongoing, of course, but it's not front page news. And what is front page news is the cost of living crisis. And the Labour Party need to double down on that. They really need to be taking lumps out of the Tories on the issue of the cost of living crisis, because it's affecting so many people. And they need to convince people who are struggling at the moment, look, the only way to fix this is to get the Tories out. The Tories are not interested in fixing it. We are. And I've said this, I remember saying this years ago, maybe not years ago, it was about a year ago. I was saying Keir Starmer needs to present himself as a fixer. Boris Johnson is a breaker, I'm the fixer. Boris Johnson is responsible for the cost of living crisis. You don't need to go into detail. You just say, the Tories are responsible for this cost of living crisis. You have to set the narrative. The public have to connect the Tories to the cost of living crisis. You need to weld it to them. And then you have to present yourself as, okay, I'm going to fix it. This is what I'm going to do. And frankly, I've been hearing very disappointing things from the Labour Party recently. Rachel Reeves was talking about, well, we don't want to increase the minimum wage too much, or, yes, public sector workers are struggling, but because inflation is going up, and we don't want to rock the boat too much. This is not the right approach. You need to be you can't be Tory light. You have to be the opposite. You have to say, we're on the side of the workers. What we're going to do is, if you vote us into power, we're going to look after you. We're going to make sure that your wages are above inflation. For too long, you've been getting poorer and poorer. We're going to we're going to lift you out of that. The Tories are talking about getting better jobs. That's not getting you out of poverty if inflation is running at 8-9%. People are going to food banks. Why are people going to food banks? I really wish that the Labour Party would break some rules in the House of Commons and hold up a bloody a graphic or a chart and say, look at how many food banks there are. Why are people going to food banks? Because they're getting poorer and poorer. Poorer and poorer under this government. We're going to end this. We're going to stop this rot that's taking place. Starmer isn't the guy. Isn't that guy? He's Tory light. On LBC Today, Rachel Reeves equals the Tory light. You can't win on Tory, because if somebody likes the Tories, they're not going to vote for Tory light. It's the same in the United States when it comes to Republicans. Some Democrats try to be Republican light. And if you're a Republican, you're going to vote for the Republican Party. You're not going to vote for something that's almost that. You're going to vote for the purest form possible. Labour care not for left thinking at all. Rachel Reeves is worse than Starmer. She's very Tory light, an economic neoliberal consensus shadow chancellor. Who is responsible? It must be me. Every time something goes wrong, they say I'm responsible. Max, I just posted a YouGov poll regarding Bozo as a reply on the tweet for the live stream. You might find interesting. I'll check that out after Magic. Anyone here at the poll tax riots? I hate Johnson more than this moment in time than I did Thatcher. It's so it says here, just to continue, it says, so what will Johnson and Sunak have to resign? Well, so this is a few hours ago. Of course, Boris Johnson will not resign. It says, according to Labour, the Liberal Democrats and just about every other opposition party, yes, Sunak and Johnson should resign. The argument is both of them categorically denied in the Commons that they had breached any rules and thus misled Parliament, a breach of the ministerial code seen as a resignation issue. However, there appears little immediate appetite among Tory MPs to replace Johnson, in part because of the Ukraine war and because the Prime Minister seen as his most likely replacement. Sunak is now badly damaged by both the fine and the revelations last week of his family's tax affairs. That said, things could move fast, and this is unprecedented political territory. What have they said in a TV clip? Okay, Johnson gave his apology. What happens next? Downing Street has promised that Johnson will make a statement only when the entire police operation is over, so that's months away. However, this could take many more weeks, and there is pressure on him to say something immediately, with Labour, the Lib Dems, SNP calling for the Commons, which is currently on Easter recess, to be recalled. Manchurian, thanks so much for that super chat. Hey, you rock. Take my money. Love you always, man. Doing an amazing job. Thank you for all you do, Max. Thank you so much, Manchurian. You rock. Wow. That's amazing. Thank you, and great to have you on the stream. Great to have you on the chat. Thanks a lot. Thanks a million. Thanks for those. That's a super chat. Have a great evening. So it'd be interesting if Parliament is recalled, because then Boris Johnson would have to answer some difficult questions, and of course he would attack Starmer. He wanted to go into another lockdown, but it's, those attacks are getting a bit weak at this stage. And while I think there's a risk with recalling Parliament, because Parliament is weak itself. I'm just thinking about it, and I say, what's the benefit of recalling Parliament? Yes, politically, it's supposed to hold Boris Johnson to account, and that's where MPs can call him out, can expose him. And I think it actually works better for the SNP than it does for the Labour Party, because the SNP really are, in a sense, using Parliament as a way to demonstrate to the people of Scotland, look at what Westminster is. Look at what a shambles it is. Look at the way Boris Johnson runs roughshod over Parliament and democracy in London. It's almost a sort of advertisement. The SNP are almost. I'm not being overly cynical here, because I know that Ian Blackford cares about the issues that he raises, but in a sort of parallel way, he's also demonstrating to the people of Scotland, the people he wants to convince, you should vote for independence. Look at what a shambles it is. Boris Johnson lies, we can do nothing about it. Boris Johnson breaks the rules, we can do nothing about it. Boris Johnson breaks the law, and there's nothing we can do about it. But if I actually call him a liar, Parliament will have me removed. So this is wonderful advertising for independence. But for the Labour Party, they're fighting a different battle. They're fighting to get rid of Johnson. And I think recalling Parliament is actually not going to do any good, because he holds almost an 80-seat majority. So whatever you say, he has his... And I'm pretty sure what would happen is they'll have a big meeting beforehand, and they'll say, okay, everyone has to come to Parliament to shout down the Labour Party. As soon as they speak, you drown them out. As soon as Keir Starmer stands up, you shout him down. And it will be a farce. And Johnson will, I'll try and cover it, but it's not going to really have any impact on him, because he has decided it's over. I want to get on with government, the work of government. I want to move on from this, and I'm not going to resign. Gareth, thanks so much for that super chat. Point and food banks since the Tories came to power. 2,563 youth centres, libraries and Sure Start centres have closed. 2,324 food banks have opened. Wonderful, Gareth. Thanks for that super chat as well. Wonderful in the sense that thanks for highlighting that, because you're doing more of a job than the Labour Party are doing at the moment. Just by highlighting that, you're doing a better job than the Labour Party. Why aren't the Labour Party talking about this? 2,000 youth centres, libraries, Sure Start centres closed. 2,300 food banks open. Close a youth centre, open a food bank. But they also need to reinforce the idea that food banks are bad, in the sense that they should not exist, that they're a consequence of austerity, they're a consequence of Tory cuts, they're a consequence of a rising cost of living. They're not a positive thing. They're the absolute opposite of that. I didn't think I'd be ranting so much tonight, but it's frustrating because you know that Boris Johnson is not going to walk. Rishi Sunak, 50-50. But Boris Johnson, 90% chance he's going to stay in his position. And as I said at the beginning, he's going to stay because it would be too damaging for the Conservative Party. They don't care about the country. They don't care about the rules. Oh my goodness. Manchurian again. No, guy, Manchurian, you need to be careful with your money. There's no need to send me super chats like this. Greatly appreciated, but bloody hell, man. Thanks so much for that. But, look after your money, okay? I really appreciate that. Wow. YouTube buddy. Also, it's very unlikely for Boris Johnson to resign. And even if he does, who will have the trust with genuine intentions to replace him? And when is the next Prime Minister's questions? Also, you've seen him try and steer away from the question, will you resign? He just talked about Ukraine. Yes. When he was asked about resigning, he said, no, there's a war on, there's Ukraine, we need to deal with that. When is the next Prime Minister's questions? I think what could happen is, it could happen next week, or it could even happen this week, depending on the pressure that's applied to the Speaker of the House, because he's the one who makes the rules for Parliament. So I think it comes down to him whether he decides, yes, Parliament will be recalled. If he thinks it's justified, he will recall Parliament, and Boris Johnson will have to answer. But I'm afraid it's not going to really have much of an impact, because for the SNP, yes, but for the Labour Party, unless they come up with some really powerful message in Prime Minister's questions and give Boris Johnson politically a bloody nose, and set the stage for the May elections, I don't see it really helping the Labour Party. Johnson will have his yahoos behind him shouting down anything that's presented, any questions that are directed at him. And of course, as most of you know, he doesn't answer questions. He avoids questions. But it'd be interesting to see what happens at PMQs next time. I don't remember so it's after Easter. That's when it should Parliament should be reopened again. But it could happen. Could happen over the next number of days. Could even happen tomorrow. But I think it depends on the Speaker. But he won't resign. And who can we trust with genuine intentions to replace him? Next on the list is Liz Truss. So Rishi Sunak, his support has completely collapsed. Liz Truss is next in line. And, Liz Truss would not be able to deal with Keir Starmer in Prime Minister's questions. Liz Truss is not somebody who would be able to motivate people to come out and vote for her or her policies. Liz Truss is no Boris Johnson. She's trying to present herself as a future Margaret Thatcher, but she's nothing like Thatcher. She doesn't have that same, I hate to use the word again, charisma. Thatcher was the Iron Lady. She had built herself up with this reputation. Liz Truss doesn't have that. She has a few sycophant Brexiteers still supporting her, but outside of that bubble, she's hardly known, and I don't see her as some real force. Now, it depends also on the media, how the newspapers, if they rally to her side and prop her up, that would help, but she isn't a Johnson. Thanks once again, Manchurian, for that super chat. Greatly appreciated. Number 3, thank you so much for that. We need a national unity government now. Yes, what needs to happen is Johnson and the Tories need to be removed. There needs to be government of national unity formed. Members of the Conservative Party who are sick and tired of Boris Johnson need to feel free to join a government of national unity. But unfortunately, I think the numbers are too much in favor of Johnson. I don't see that happening at the moment. The Labour Party, the Lib Dems, the Greens, the SNP, if you want to include them as well, they don't have the numbers at the moment. And there aren't enough Tories because Boris Johnson ejected them all back in 2019. Do you remember when they were called traitors by the media? Traitors, they were called by Brexiteers. They were expelled from the party. Boris Johnson's coup was to replace them with Brexiteers, and he did exactly that. And he reinforced his position. Manchurian, once again, thank you so much for that. How dare you tell people not to show love? Tut, tut, tut. Only messing. Last one on us. Thank you so much. Have a great night. And thanks for coming on. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much for those super chats. Very kind once again. So guys, before we move on to the next topic, we'll just have a short break. We have one from Mike, and then I'll read it out. Have you had enough super chats to turn on the studio heater for 10 minutes, Max? For 8 minutes. I'm joking. Thank you so much, Mike, as well. Really appreciate the super chats. Very kind of all of you. Just to remind you, tomorrow we're going to have a special event on Discord. It's a 2-year anniversary of the founding of the Discord server, and we're going to put out a special invite to people if they want to jump on just to have a look around what Discord is like. Normally it's Patreon only, but for tomorrow there'll be you'd have limited access to Discord, and we'll have a bit of a chat about what's happening on Discord and a bit of a chat about what's happening with Boris Johnson as well. I'll post details about that on the community page either tonight or tomorrow morning, but I'll keep you posted on that. So if you do have a chance to check it out tomorrow, probably tomorrow evening at some stage, but I'll keep you informed. So before we move on to the next topic, I just want to share with you a funny moment, and then we can continue with the serious stuff.
Oh, it's you. Listen, my place is a zoo. Oh! Who do you think you are kidding, Mr. Hitler? If you think we're up the wall. Right, that's it. I'm out of here. Why? Because he's had a few drinkies. He's been under a lot of stress. I'm heading off as well there, so... Oh my god, would you jump in a pond if he told you to? Depends how he asked. When the going gets tough, the weak piss off. Is there any bloody loyalty anymore, I ask you? Oi, get in the pond! No chance. But if he was like, hey, would you mind getting in the pond there, take a snap for you, just messing kind of, maybe. Would you wake up, will ya? He doesn't give a shit about you. Hardly. Hey, buddy. These two Judases are thinking of jumping shit. I just want to let you know, I'm going nowhere. Who are you? Ooh. I wouldn't put up with that, mate. So yeah, place is literally falling apart. I can see what you're saying. It's gonna knock it, turn it into student apartments. Yeah? So I'm alright to move in with you, yeah? Sure, you hate me. I don't hate you. I'm just not mad about the way you abandoned me when you got your own place and ever so much as called to see how I was getting on. Really bad, if you're interested. Not this again. I've said sorry. You haven't, actually. I've said sorry loads of times, mate. Cop on. Maybe not about this, like. Anyway, bygones. Sure, look, this is an opportunity for you to make amends now. When can I move in? Yeah, I mean, as I say, I'd love to have you over here, but I just can't afford it. You know, energy costs, yada yada. I'm taking 45-second showers at the moment, you know. That's complete horseshit. Sure, you'd actually have more money if we go in together. I don't want to upset himself then either, like. I'm fairly sure he won't even notice. Suppose the other thing then is the room is tiny, but Do you know what I mean? If it's too small for you, I mean, I reckon I might only get about 5 or 6 students in it.
Do you want to make amends?
I don't want you, okay? I find you angry, potentially violent. You might come after my job, and I just don't like your head. Let's keep the living arrangements the way they are.
Woo! I wouldn't put up with that, mate.
Irish history explained through Cork comedy. So guys, let's move on. We have another Manchurian once again. I'm the next Boris, a liar. Can't help myself, just an addiction, honestly. Thank you so much, Manchurian. Wow. Thank you so much, very kind of you. You're a liar, yes, Boris Johnson. The next Boris Johnson. Greatly appreciate. Thank you so much for that. You need to stop, okay? Look after your finances, please do. It's greatly appreciated, but I don't want people getting into trouble. Speaking of trouble, we have this story on Brexit. Chronic food industry workers shortfall could force prices even higher, MPs say. So I covered a story today. It was, I think it was released today. I covered it yesterday about the beetroot crop, rotting in a field because, well, it couldn't be sold. It couldn't be shipped. So once again, with Brexit, we're seeing more and more problems. Chronic worker shortages in the food and farming sector as a result of Brexit and the coronavirus pandemic could push food prices even higher and lead to more food having to be imported, MPs have warned. Parliamentarians on the Environment, Food and Rural Affairs Committee reported that the sector have 500,000 vacancies in August, representing an eighth of all roles. Last August so this is the period when the crops are collected or harvested. A huge labour shortage in the food sector have led to unharvested crops being let to rot in fields, killing of healthy pigs on farms because of a lack of workers at meat processing plants, and disruption to the food supply chain, as well as threatening the UK's food security. The committee, which is chaired by Conservative MP Neil Parish is a Remainer, okay. Neil Parish is somebody who did not support Brexit, along with 5 other Conservatives, 4 Labour MPs and 1 Scottish National Party colleague, wrote in a report that the workforce shortfall was the single biggest factor affecting the sector. We've heard this before, and the problem with the response is from the likes of what's his name? George Eustace, the Secretary of State for the Environment, Food and Rural Affairs, and his response has been, we're going to try and do whatever we can. But he does not hold his hand over the tap. And what I mean, the tap that increases the number of workers who can come in and fill these positions. That's Priti Patel. And Priti Patel does not want to appear relaxed when it comes to controls on immigration. She needs to keep the racists happy, so she needs to appear tough, and she doesn't want to look as if, we're actually undoing Brexit, because once again, I've said this before, they're concerned about voters flipping to the likes of UKIP or Nigel Farage's next operation. Manchurian again, thank you so much for that. Okay. Last one, going to chill for a bit, up early tomorrow for work. Keep it up, Max. We love you. We love you too, Manchurian. And keep it, and have a great night. Get a good night's sleep, and don't work too hard tomorrow. And have a safe journey to work tomorrow, however you go. Car, bicycle, train, whatever it is. Thanks so much for that. Have a great night. The committee, which is chaired by the food industry is the UK's largest manufacturing sector, but MPs issued the stark warning when it could shrink permanently if the government does not address the acute labour shortages, which could lead to wage rises, price increases and reduced competitiveness and ultimately food production being exported abroad. They found that food and farming businesses had been badly hit by the lack of workers, with the pig sector particularly affected, prompting a crisis in domestic production. Industry associations have previously claimed that up to 40 independent farms left the sector as a result. Farmers have been warned for some time about the lack of workers, after many overseas workers went home during the pandemic, and Brexit has limited the number of EU temporary workers who can travel to the UK on seasonal work visa scheme. And, as I said, whether George Eustice wants to help farms or not, I don't know, but it's actually quite irrelevant because he's not the one who controls the flow of visas. And farmers and their and processing plants and growers have been demanding more workers. Otherwise, they'll close. And if they close, then the food will have to be replaced by imported food, which means it's either more expensive or it's going to become, or if you want to protect UK industry, then you'll need to impose tariffs, which will mean that UK industry will be charging more. So you have a cost of living crisis where people need access to food. If you're to protect UK farmers, then you need to drive up the price of food coming in from the country outside. But at the same time, you're limiting farmers' ability to hire workers. So if they have access to a smaller pool, they're either paying more or they're going under. So UK produce is going to go up in price if you're to protect it, or you're to allow it to be imported, which is cheaper, but this is going to decimate the industry. And all this because of Brexit. It's a lose-lose scenario here. And you still hear Brexiteers saying, yeah, well, this is the price of freedom. This is the price of sovereignty. Now, staying somewhat with Brexit, how Brexit is going to affect the situation in Northern Ireland, which is... So, in May, there are the local elections in England and Scotland. I'm not sure about Wales. I forget about Wales. Sorry, Welsh people, I forget. But the local elections are happening in Great Britain. But in Northern Ireland, there is the... there is the assembly elections, and it's looking more and more likely that Sinn Féin will become the largest party. It says here, historical shift for Northern Ireland. Now, how does this play into Brexit? Well, the Northern Ireland Protocol, the pro-protocol parties seem to be gaining the upper hand here, and the DUP and the TUV are likely to end up in second place. So it says here, polls suggest Republicans on course to win most votes for the first time in Stormont elections and provide the first minister. Northern Ireland politics are on the brink of an inflection point on the 5th of May if the latest polling proves correct, ending a century in which the largest party in Northern Ireland politics has come from the unionist community. So unionism has always held control over the levers of power in Northern Ireland, and since the Good Friday Agreement there has been a shift to provide something a bit more equitable. Manchurian, once again, the one thing that's going to go up in the stream, your wallet, right, I'm going now. Night everyone, thank you so much, Manchurian, greatly appreciated. Yes, that's true. Thank you so much for that. Wow, it was amazing support there from Manchurian. I hope you'll be able to make it to the chat tomorrow on Discord. Make sure to check out the link. I'll post it either tonight or tomorrow on the community page. So hopefully see you there. Thank you so much once again, and have a great night. And this time go to bed, okay? It says here, instead, Sinn Féin, a party which campaigns for a united Ireland, seems likely to win a historic victory, becoming the largest party in Stormont. Sinn Féin is historically associated with the IRA, but after a ceasefire, its politicians have committed themselves to peaceful participation in politics through the Northern Ireland Assembly since the return of a devolved legislation in 1998. The latest Northern Irish opinion polls put Sinn Féin at 26% of the vote, 7 points ahead of the DUP, the Democratic Unionists, on 19%. The DUP fiercely defends Northern Ireland remaining in the UK. What I find interesting is this explanation. This is a British newspaper explaining that the DUP is a pro-union party, wants Northern Ireland to remain in the UK. What's funny about that for me is that this has to be explained. I'm not criticizing British people, but most people probably don't know who the DUP are. They've probably heard about those weird people who believe the Earth is 6 to 10,000 years old, right? yeah, that's a sort of vast simplification, but it shows how Northern Ireland is miles away, millions of miles away from what happens in Great Britain. And I'm not criticizing people in Great Britain for not understanding what's happening in Northern Ireland. Many people don't want to know what's happening in Northern Ireland, and rightly so, because it's a bit of a disaster over there. But it's the people, unionists in Northern Ireland say, we're British, we're as British as someone living in Kent or in Manchester, but in a sense you're not, because the people in Kent and Manchester deal with in their politics in a much different way. There isn't the sectarianism, for example, that you find in Northern Ireland. There isn't this loyalty to crown that you get in Northern Ireland. There isn't this loyalty to a flag or to an idea from, for example, from 1690 that you get in Northern Ireland and parts of Scotland, of course, but that's a different kettle of fish. It goes on to say, it would be only the second time in the region's history that a nationalist party, one advocating for a united Ireland, will have gained the most preferential votes, and the first time nationalists have won the most seats and the right to appoint a First Minister. With the Scottish National Party dominant in Holyrood, a Sinn Féin win would leave both Scotland and Northern Ireland's legislators led by parties advocating an exit from the UK. This would be an interesting period, okay? So you'd have Scotland led by a government that wants to leave the UK, and you also have Northern Ireland led by a biggest part, because they have to form a government with the DUP, or which is weird, because you have this sort of weird marriage of two extremes together, working together, attempting to work together in order to push through legislation. It wouldn't be a case where Sinn Féin would get over 50% and they would rule on their own. It's the Good Friday Agreement doesn't allow for that. It forces the two sides to work together. Looking at elections through Northern Ireland's 101-year history shows just how significant a Sinn Féin win would be. So you can see here, hopefully you can see it, it's a bit small. You can see how the Ulster Unionists, Nationalists, Unionists in orange, of course, Nationalist in green, and other parties. So does this move across? Oh, okay, it goes like, oh, this is cool. Okay, so we can see from, so from 1930s, Unionists all the way, okay. Other parties in the 1960s, then we saw the rise of the nationalist parties, and saw the Unionist vote split between the DUP and the UUP. Then we had so in 2010 we saw the DUP and Sinn Féin becoming the main parties, and in 2022 it's going to change, where you have Sinn Féin in charge, which is going to be interesting. Let me read some more of your comments. So the DUP got DUP'd. Duped. It is 1400 in Wales. I thought the DUP working towards a united Ireland. Didn't they back Brexit? Yes. And that's something I bring up on every occasion. Every time I interact with somebody from the DUP, I ask, did you vote for Brexit? And this is what should have happened when Michel Barnier or Maroš Šefčovič in particular was meeting with the DUP. His first question should have been to them, did you vote for Brexit? Because if you have a problem with the protocol, then, you voted for that. You got what you voted for. Anyway, but he doesn't do that. He's too diplomatic. But that's what my first question would be to every unionist I'd meet if I was in charge. In the Irish government or in the EU, I'd say to them, did you vote for Brexit? Just out of curiosity. Because you're getting what you voted for. Okay, I want to move on away from that for a moment and talk a little bit about the Labour Party. So it says here, Sunak completely out of touch on everyday struggles. This is from Keir Starmer. This is from yesterday. Keir Starmer has accused Rishi Sunak of rank hypocrisy and questions the ability of super rich politicians to relate to the public, as Number 10 came under pressure to reveal if any ministers used schemes to avoid tax. So it's amazing how these things move so quickly. So yesterday we were talking about Rishi Sunak and his wife, whether he, what was going on, whether he would resign over this. Now we have this scandal with the fixed penalty notices. What's going to happen with that? Boris Johnson's trying to sweep it under the carpet. But it's important, there's so many things. Every day there's something new. And yesterday it was, last week and this week, until today, it was Rishi Sunak. So it says, in an interview with The Guardian amid controversy over Rishi Sunak's wife's tax status, Starmer said having a spouse who is a non-dom would create an obvious conflict of interest for any cabinet minister. He called on the Prime Minister to make clear that there are no other cabinet ministers have taken advantage of the non-dom status, used tax havens, or benefited from offshore trusts. Starmer has referred himself to the advisor on ministerial interest for an inquiry on has referred himself for an inquiry on and his wife Akshata Murthy last week said she would pay all UK tax on foreign earnings in future, which is really weird because if you did nothing wrong, then why would you pay the tax? Like, you could have paid the tax and you didn't, and now you're like saying, okay, yeah, I'm going to pay the tax. Like, you spent £30,000 on this for this benefit of not having to pay the tax, and then you pay the tax. Did she ask for a refund from HMRC? No, not HMRC. From Rishi Sunak's department, from the Treasury for the £30,000 that she spent on having the non-dom status. Gareth, thanks so much for that super chat. And DUP is Despots Uniting Provinces. Yes. Oh my God, it's going to be beautiful to watch the DUP crash and burn in the 5th of May. And hopefully that's what happens in May. Just around the corner, actually. They had hoped to form a pact with the TUV, but the TUV are just as slimy as the DUP. So that sort of fell apart pretty soon. And I don't think they're going to transfer votes to each other. It's becoming quite toxic. And we saw an image that I posted just a few days ago of the leader of the DUP, a poster, picture of him was cut out, and people put a noose around his neck. It's pretty toxic in Northern Ireland, but it's even more toxic within unionism. And all because of Brexit. If Brexit had not taken place, we wouldn't be having these discussions about the protocol. The idea of a united Ireland would be further down the road. And it's moving closer, and unionists are getting desperate because they see the writing on the wall. And if Sinn Féin become the biggest party in May, they're going to damage control, be panic mode, because they're like, okay, now what do we do? Our days are over. Our days of running the country are over. And if you have Sinn Féin in Northern Ireland and you have Sinn Féin in Dublin, because if there's an election held, it's looking more and more likely that Sinn Féin will become the biggest party. They could either form a coalition or they may be able to form a government on their own, but I don't think that's possible. But if you have Taoiseach, Sinn Féin Taoiseach, I would not want to be a member of the DUP in that moment, because it'd be very concerning and potentially very dangerous as well. Fearless Wolf, thanks so much for that super chat. I got asked for a receipt for buying a cake from the bakery. Hope the tax man doesn't find out. Thanks for that. You could ask Rishi Sunak. Is it okay? Sunak said Starmer said the Chancellor had still had basic things to answer about how much tax his family had avoided with Murtha's non-dom status, with estimates she legally avoided paying taxes of £20 million on overseas earnings. Sunak's own financial interests are also under scrutiny as he resisted calls to reveal what assets he had put into a blind management arrangement, meaning that they are kept secret from the public. This is not just some backbench MP. This is not just some guy on the street. This is not just somebody, sitting in the audience of Question Time. This is the Chancellor. This is, for people outside the UK, this is the Minister for Finance. This is somebody who should be transparent. This is somebody who's calling for transparency from others, of course. It's insane. The Brexiteers have turned Britain, if it didn't have a monarchy, have turned it into a banana republic. The corruption is off the scale. You have people who are in charge of finance who are squirreling money away into blind management accounts where it's hidden from the public. We're just short of Boris Johnson having gold hidden under his house or something like that. Gold stolen from the public, hidden in somewhere, in sock drawers or something in number 10. DC, thanks so much for that super chat. Hi Max, what are your thoughts on the May elections after everything today? I think we're going to have to wait for a few days for things to settle down. And there's a lot of it will pivot on how the Labour Party react to this. That's the unfortunate thing about this, is that the public need to be pushed. The public need to be convinced about this, because Boris Johnson may get away with just saying, look, I paid my fine, nothing to see here, move along. And it's important that you'll hear from the SNP, you'll hear from the Greens, you'll hear from the Lib Dems, who will be aggressive in their response. But the biggest party in opposition need to really hammer this. And I think the Labour Party need to come back to what I hope what they're doing at the moment is they're sitting in a smoke-filled room discussing strategy on how to deal with this. If they're not, I'm very concerned, because they need to come to be organised. They need to have talking points prepared for everyone who's going to be in the media, and they need to be aggressive, because there's a real chance that they could give the government a real bloody nose in May. There isn't much time, and it's important that they react in the right way. But I think the bigger issue is going to be the cost of living crisis, because this is going to be flavour of the month, but not of the month, flavour of the week. This is going to be in the headlines for another few days, and then we will get back to the real. Not to dismiss what's been happening, but the real issue that's affecting people at the moment. The pandemic, what Boris Johnson did during the lying to Parliament, all of this does not really affect the average person on the street, but the cost of living crisis does. And I think the Labour Party really need to hit them, because if they don't, then what's going to happen is you're going to see a lackluster... The Labour Party will pick up a few seats. There'll be a bit of a switch. Probably the benefactors will be the Lib Dems and the Greens. The Labour Party will pick up a few, but it won't be a lot. This is probably if they do nothing. So I think the Conservatives are going to suffer, but it will be manageable. But if the Labour Party really double down on the cost of living crisis, really reinforce this idea that the Conservatives are out of touch, they don't care about people, they've made people poorer, and that the Labour Party are going to stand on the side of working people, stand on the side of people in poverty, disabled people, people who are struggling at the moment, people who can't pay their bills, people who can't heat their homes, that they're going to provide real solutions to that. Not the sort of rubbish that you heard from Rachel Reeves, Tory-like crap, real solutions. Then I think there's a chance that they could really turn a lot of councils and a lot of seats over to the Labour Party. They could really do a lot of damage. So it's difficult. Sorry, I'm not able to give a better prediction than that, but I think it depends on a number of factors. It depends on how the Labour Party deal with this crisis. Are they going to come out fighting, or are they going to go, well, let's let Boris, dig his own pit? But I don't think that's going to benefit them. I hope I'm wrong. I hope there's a massive swing to the Labour Party. The Conservatives are completely destroyed. They lose councils, they lose seats. It's the worst result for them in decades. I hope that's the case, but you would imagine it would be, looking at this cost of living crisis. But they still continue to limp on. Gareth, thanks so much for that super chat once again. I paid my fine. There's nothing to see here. Let's move on. I'm sorry, but when did Boris Johnson turn into Ben freaking Kenobi? These are not the droids you're looking for. Exactly. Wonderful. And I'm a huge Star Wars fan, so I really get that reference. Boris Johnson has some Jedi mind trick. I don't know how he does it. It works on the public, okay? It works very well on the public. The public just don't turn out and vote, or they go, well, Boris is doing his best. So I think it's a case of really ramming this one home from the Labour Party's point of view. We're getting... I did a lot of ranting tonight, so I want to move on to what's happening in Ukraine. Now, I just want to show you this video, which was interesting. I can't think of another adjective to describe it. So this is... Don't think there's any audio, but... So this is a video of heavy armor, heavy military equipment being moved towards the Finnish border, so the border with Finland in northern Russia. Now, is this something to be concerned about? I don't think so. I think this is just an attempt for Putin to look tough. Yeah, I'm going to distract the West by moving equipment, heavy equipment, towards the Finnish border. I don't think he's going to do anything about this. And it's also important to remember that while Finland is not a member of NATO, it has applied for NATO membership. I think this is an attempt, a very bad attempt at convincing Finland not to join NATO. Maybe the Russians believe that if we intimidate people, they won't join the club where they can't be intimidated. is that what goes through Putin's mind? Oh, look, I'm going to intimidate you so you don't join the club where you're protected. No, it's in Finland's interest to join NATO. Perhaps Putin thinks that he can split the country. You know, people will come out and say, well, look, if we join NATO, there's a risk to the country. If we don't, he'll leave us alone. I don't think it'll work like that. And then we can look back at the history between Russia and Finland. And, well, the last time Russia invaded Finland, it didn't go very well. They eventually won, but at a huge, massive cost. Putin has lost already. No predicting a psycho, no. Just a positive story from UK point of view, and then I just want to move on to the other parts of the Ukraine stories. It says here, Ukrainian troops to arrive on UK soil within days for emergency training to fight Russia. So I think this is very important. So Ukrainian troops will arrive on UK soil within days for emergency training to fight against Russia, a minister has announced. James Happily, the Armed Forces Minister, said 120 UK supplied armoured vehicles are being made ready for Ukrainian troops as Russia prepares to step up attacks on the east of Ukraine. The Ukrainian troops that will operate them will arrive in the UK in the next few days to learn how to drive and command these vehicles. The UK has helped train the Ukrainian armed forces since Russia's annexation of Crimea in 2014 under a British military scheme called Operation Orbital. The project, which was announced suspended in February in the wake of the Russian invasion, helped train more than 22,000 Ukrainian military personnel. The UK has handed Ukraine a 1.5 billion loans package in 2021 to boost its naval presence. Britain has continued to supply anti-armour weaponry to Ukraine since the start of the war, including more than 4,000 anti-tank missiles. So what's important is, and this is something that we many people tend to forget, we can give weapons to Ukraine, all types of equipment as well, but it's important that they know how to operate it. And there's a concern, for example, when it comes to Germany. Germany has been sending modern tanks like the Leopard tank, which is, well, it operates differently to the tanks that are normally used in Ukraine. So the operators will need training on how to use them, how to operate them to the best of their ability, and that takes time. So in some ways it's better to bring the soldiers to Britain, for example, to train on how to use this new equipment. Or it's better. It's not just a case of sending more and more weapons, because people need time to train how to use them, how to benefit from them. And you know, if you send them to people who are not fully trained, you're going to lose the equipment and you're going to lose the lives of those soldiers. So it's important that there is equipment, but there is also the training that goes along with it. And the bigger the equipment, for example, a tank, you don't just send a tank, you also have to send a crew to fix the tank, to repair it. You need to send supplies to maintain the tank. You need to send people to train the operators of the tank, especially as you know, more and more tanks are becoming newer tanks and becoming more and more complex with new types of technology inside them that allow the tank to operate in different conditions. This requires training, it requires time, and Ukraine doesn't have a lot of that time in particular. Can the Leopard tank do the Kessel Run? Another Star Wars reference. In 12 parsecs. Tanks, but no tanks. You made political change by inches, not by miles. For example, of what happens when you do it by a mile, you get the results of Brexit. Yes, you have to do it very slowly. If we just offload all this equipment to Ukraine without them having the proper training, it's just going to be lost. But it's interesting how over the last number of years, the Ukrainian military has been trained by professionals from Britain, and we've seen the results of that. And, you know, okay, it seems to be back. Apologies for that. I hope it's working. Please let me know if it's working. Freezing. It's okay now? Okay, not sure what happened. Okay, apologies. It's working. Okay, so something froze for a moment on my side as well. Just want to say, many people criticize, oh, you know, Max, you're anti-British and everything. No, look, if Britain is doing something well, and I commend the British government and I commend the British Armed Forces for what they're doing in Ukraine. They're providing necessary equipment, they're providing the necessary training, high quality training, and they should be commended for that. And I'm commending the British government for what they're doing in Ukraine. I'm not commending Boris Johnson, because Boris Johnson is trying to use, I believe he was using his meeting with Zelensky as a photo opportunity in order to boost his own ratings and his own polling. But the action of the British government in Ukraine is to be commended. It's doing a wonderful job. It's leading in many ways. NATO is leading, of course, but Britain is doing a wonderful job, and they need to be commended for that. And the British people have opened up their homes and their hearts to people. And I want to commend also my friend Graham Hughes, who drove to Ukraine in a camper van, I think it was, and he brought 6 people back from Ukraine or Poland. I'm not sure. I think it was Poland or directly from Ukraine to the UK. A wonderful guy. Like, well done to Graham for doing that. You know, the people. We have to separate the people from the Tories, okay? Separate the people from Boris Johnson, because the people are doing wonderful things. People are opening up their homes and their hearts to Ukrainian refugees. The British military are helping where they can, the Ukrainian military, training them, providing them with the equipment that's necessary to deal with this invasion, and they have to be commended for that. If Max was anti-British, he wouldn't spend so much time trying to expose the Tories. But no, and Brexit is damaging to the people of Britain. That's why I'm so against it. And I don't want Brexit replicated around Europe. I don't want that toxicity and that damage being inflicted upon other people. And I hope that it can be undone. I truly do believe it will be undone eventually. There will be a day when the UK rejoins the European Union. I don't know when, but I can put my hand on my heart and say it will happen. I know it will happen. I just don't know when. It will. And the Brexiteers can say whatever they want, but it will be the will of the people to rejoin, guaranteed. In a sense, I just want to show you what's happening. So moving away from Brexit and Ukraine for a moment, in France there is an important election. So we've seen the results of the first round between Macron and Le Pen. Now, Le Pen used to support leaving the European Union, but I think what's happened after Brexit, it has toned down some of her rhetoric. But I'm deeply concerned that many of the people who came out to vote for the second candidate, so there was Le Pen, Macron, and then there were a number of other candidates. The left-wing candidate received a huge amount of support, but where are his supporters going to go now? Are they going to go to Le Pen? Are some of them going to go to Macron? Or are many of them going to stay at home, which could be a big problem in the second round?
Good evening from Paris. President Macron is nothing if not a fighter. Encouraged by the result of the first round of the elections last night, he took his campaign to the industrial heartland of his rival Marine Le Pen today, desperately seeking working class votes, which he needs to win the second round of the election in 2 weeks from now. He'll have heard one accusation above all others, that he's out of touch with ordinary France. In the end, the future of this country hinges on one question. What is greater here? Fear of Le Pen, the hard right-wing nationalist, or hatred of Macron, the incumbent? Traditional parties like the Socialists and the Republicans that once ruled France for decades have almost disappeared completely, leaving President Macron alone and lonely in the centre, facing a barrage of extremes. In the glare of the morning, one thing has become obvious. In the French Republic, a rising tide of extremism is challenging a president who alone embodies the establishment. Last night at Emmanuel Macron's camp, they weren't sure whether to prepare for defeat or victory. Some leaked polls had him losing. Then, as the polls closed, almost everything changed. The atmosphere here 2 minutes ago was that of a wake. There is massive relief here in Macron's headquarters that he's done relatively well in the first round. 28% is pretty good. He will now go head-to-head with Marine Le Pen in the next round of the election, the decisive one, a replay of 5 years ago, not necessarily with the same result. Emmanuel Macron thanked the 9.8 million French who had voted for him. But he knows that to hold on to his job, he needs to persuade millions of others that he feels their grievances and will do something about them. He once promised to change the system. Now he is the system. And the far right and far left are snapping at his heels. In the crowd, France's defense minister, Florence Parly. So the extremes are in the majority, right?
It's 50%. So now we will have to fight against non-participation. That's the first. And we will have also to explain what is President Macron's proposals for the future. A France which is supposed to be strong, has an ambition for itself, and
he's not been very good at selling his record, though, has he? I mean, he's done quite a lot, but he's not been very good at selling his achievements.
He has not very much time to do so due to the international environment, but I'm sure that he will spend the time necessary to explain what is his project for France.
The most common accusation against Macron is that he's too aloof and elitist, but he's also embraced a multicultural France like few others. Okay. How do you feel tonight?
Amazing.
Amazing?
Yes.
You were making a sort of comme ci, comme ça face there.
No. I am...
Let's have a look. Oh, there we go.
Now I'm so excited. Excited, very excited.
But he could still lose. Second round, right?
No.
It's possible. Everything's possible.
No.
She would beg to differ. This election was Marine Le Pen's third attempt at the presidency, and so far her best result. Her forte is still to channel the resentment of a France that yearns for a whiter, more predictable past.
You notice no European flags here.
Seulement un vote de circonstance, mais un choix de société et même de civilisation. De votre vote dépend en effet sur tout le territoire français la légitime prépondérance de la culture et de la langue française.
Turns out her Achilles heel is her past admiration for this man. She liked his strongman image, he liked her opposition to the EU and NATO, and now she would love France to forget these snaps.
And I hope they don't. This idea of, let's weaken France by taking ourselves out of NATO. Let's weaken France by getting out of the EU. And of course he supported that because he supports weakened enemies. His enemies are the United States. His enemies are the European Union. And of course Brexit, he supported Brexit because he didn't care about, taking back control, or he didn't care about immigration, but he saw that it would damage Europe. A united Europe is a counterbalance to the Russian Federation. a weakened Europe allows him to do whatever the hell he wants. And of course, he thought when it came to Ukraine, and this is my theory on it, he thought he'd be able to just march in. The West would do nothing. The West is divided. The West is weak, and NATO would be scrambling. NATO would be fighting amongst itself. Should we intervene? Should we not? And he was not expecting this united front against Russia. He was expecting Ukraine pretty much to be left on its own. And I think he was expecting a rerun of Crimea back in 2014. That he'd just march in. There would be a bit of hand-wringing, but that would be about it. And he would get away with it. He would put in his own person in Kiev and be done and dusted in a couple of days. And while he had replaced the government in Ukraine with his own one, the West would be still trying to decide what to do.
It's on every TV show, every member of government was saying, oh, look at Marine Le Pen, she's a puppet of Vladimir Putin. If you elect her, you're basically electing Vladimir Putin in France. I'm not sure it will work that much. Here's the thing. Ukraine and the war in Ukraine is important, but it's mostly about geopolitics. The French are also mostly worried right now about what's happening in France. They're worried about how they'll put gas in their tank, if they'll have money in their wallet at the end of the month.
The cost of living crisis.
Yeah, exactly.
Il ne faut pas donner une seule voix à Madame Le Pen.
Not a single vote to Madame Le Pen, says the man who could swing this election. Jean-Luc Mélenchon, old warhorse of the hard left.
But will his supporters listen to him? Because he's saying not one single vote to Le Pen. But he can't control how the voters will go. And you would imagine people on the left would be like, I'm not going to Le Pen, that racist, that fascist. But some people will be angry with the establishment. Some people, unfortunately, will be wanting to give maybe Macron a bloody nose, and they will come out and vote for Le Pen. We tend to think of people voting in a rational way. It doesn't always work like that. We saw with Brexit how that worked. And this is a concern of mine, that what will happen is Macron will not be able to convince enough people to come out and vote for him. And what, as normally happens, is they rely on the left holding its nose and voting to keep Le Pen out. Not so much a ringing endorsement for Macron or the centrist, but a vote against Le Pen. And that's not good politics. You should be winning votes, not causing the other person to lose. Maybe this is a problem with the French political system, but it's not. It doesn't leave a good taste in people's mouths. Yes, we voted to keep her out. That can go on for so long. People will get tired of that, and then somebody like Le Pen. Hopefully she doesn't get in this time, but somebody, her daughter, whoever. This is how it works in their family. Father, daughter, and then granddaughter. Maybe Le Pen's daughter will run the next time, and she'll have a better chance. George, thanks so much for that super chat. They need to paste the picture of Le Pen with Putin all over France. Yes, they do. But as we saw in this report, that's not really the most important issue to many people. And in a similar way, what's happening in Britain, yes, Boris Johnson has broken the law. Boris Johnson has broken the rules. Boris Johnson has given a fake apology. But that's not what's going to drive people to the polling booths in May. It's the cost of living crisis. And the Labour Party need to really grab that by the horns, and they need to grab it and run with it. They need to expose Boris Johnson. It's sort of opposite has to happen in France. Macron, our guy, he has to say, look, I'm the guy who's going to deal with this. Le Pen is not going to deal with it. She has no real plan. She has no answers to your questions. She will make it worse. And we will see. So guys, we're at the end of the stream. I want to say a massive thank you to everyone who sent super chats. I want to say a massive thank you to everyone who sent a chat message, smash the like button. Remember, tomorrow we have our special event. I'll post a link on the community page to that. Do check it out tomorrow, where it'll be, our Discord server is 2 years old, so we'll have you'll be welcomed onto that for a little bit to see what it's like, and we're going to have a video chat on that tomorrow. I'll give you more details later on the community page, so do check that out when you can. And I'll see you next Friday, same bat time, same bat channel, and we'll discuss what's happening. Maybe Boris Johnson will have resigned by then, or maybe not. So before we finish, we have our one for the road, and I hope you enjoy that.
So the Prime Minister, his wife and the Chancellor have all been issued with fixed penalty notices. I'm joined now by the MP for Lichfield. What do you make of all this? Well, it's been a long time coming and now it's come, which I believe is one of the Prime Minister's favourite sayings. How bad does it look for Boris Johnson? The thing is that I don't think that Boris Johnson thought he was breaking the law. Just like he didn't think he was lying when he said he hadn't gone to any parties. It's amazing what he can think or not think when he puts his mind to it. He just thought he was like those nurses and teachers who, after a very long shift, would go back to the staff room and crack open the booze. Which nurses and teachers? Look, I don't blame them. We all need a drink at the end of the day, and at the start of the day, and during the day. I mean, I'm having a drink right now, which probably explains a lot. Sorry, do you know nurses and teachers who actually did this? Because, well, all the key workers I've spoken to said that they weren't allowed to socialise at all, and that places like staff rooms were shut, and, well, they'd never even dream of drinking at work. Goodness me, your questions are longer than my answers. Are they also more truthful? Touché. All I can say is that, yes, I know several nurses who get absolutely blotto after work, especially those responsible for my complexion and hair. What about the suitcases of alcohol? Well, that's fair enough. There's no bar in Downing Street, unlike most schools and hospitals, I assume. So you think all of the parties were okay. Now, I don't know about any birthday parties because I wasn't invited to them. Not because they don't like me, because they didn't want to give me COVID. Because I wasn't already working cheek and jowl with them. What? Oh, come on, you remember the slogan, stay at home, protect the NHS, only give it to your work colleagues. Catchy, wasn't it? Labour are calling for resignations. Well, Keir Starmer needs to make up his mind. Only last week he said that Boris shouldn't resign, and now that the situation's changed, he's changed his position. Obviously can't be trusted. You're very loyal, aren't you? I'm not always loyal. I do sometimes vote against the government if they're proposing something sensible, but you still support the Prime Minister. Yes, and I know there'll be a lot of exasperated people watching this, throwing up their hands thinking, what's he talking about? And I also know quite a lot of them will really fancy some banoffee pie.
Wonderful. And how does he do it? In a matter of hours, as the story dropped, he has a comedy video on it. Amazing. Well done, Matt. So, see you on Friday. Have a great week. Stay safe and have a great night, whatever's left of it. I hope to see you on post-stream chat tonight and also the chat tomorrow. Once again, I'll post a link on the community page about that. Hope you can make it. If not, I'll see you on Friday. Have a great week. Good night.